agenda today. No Sahas requests today. We've got 5 people coming in for election board confirmations. Brenda could not make it today, but you guys should have received her rationale for why everyone was picked, or at least her reasonings behind that, and I have it up here too, so we can follow it up as needed. After that, discussion for ECS fees. Britt got back to us with information, so we're good on that. We just be ironing out the finer details, and I'll explain that. I have legislation to bring, 1 JL, which I have to amend onto this legislation, and 1 FBL, changing our procedural rules to confirm the liaison program. The JL, which would confirm that the budgetary policies, Justin and I can take on liaisons. So those 2 pieces of legislation are on for tonight. Definition of the GBM was on there. I listed as an FBL. I'm removing that. We'll prepare to remove that anyway. For the living document idea, just ideally we could hopefully get some things down and should be with that. We can start directing clubs too. We can change this document as we need. Someone can hop on and say, I think we should do this. Everyone's okay with that. We're fine with doing that. But I'd like to at least try and start that living document or get something that everyone can agree on as a base start, if that makes sense. That being said, I'd like to move to amend the agenda to create some of the changes that I was going to. All right, if you scroll down. Hello. So the changes that, so the changes that I'm going to make are crossing out the FBL because I didn't write an FBL. Legislation wasn't really the best way to do it. So we might be doing a resolution on that, but just striking that, just to be talking about it, and then adding on the JL 13. So those are my proposed amendments. Everyone good with those?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? All right, motion carries. You can just click on the checkbox for those on the side. All right, and then up next we have our minutes. Did everyone get a chance to look over the minutes from last meeting? Wow, only 9 pages. I know it's a short meeting. Everyone go with the minutes?
I made a suggestion, but that was it. It was just, I think it said I talked to so I just said I was going to talk to him. So that was my suggestion.
Is everyone okay with the amendments to these minutes then? All right. Is there a motion regarding the minutes as amended?
Move to approve the amended meeting minutes from November 26th.
Second.
All right. All in favor? All opposed? All right. And we're good. So that's the agenda. Up first, we have confirmations. So I'd like to introduce, I'd like to introduce JL 11-1920, confirmation of Caleb Johnson as a member of the election board. If you could open up that legislation. All right. So we'll start off with a round of introductions so you kind of know who we are as the other legislative body. As you can see, it was passed through the Senate last night. So the Senate's good with them, but we'll go around your round of introductions. You'll be given about a couple minutes to introduce yourself, what you do, why you want to be election members, that kind of stuff. And then there'll be questions and discussions afterwards. Anyone want to start with introductions?
Thanks, Rick. Hi, I'm Amber Bosch. I'm a finance board representative. I use she, her pronouns. I am a voting member. I'm also on nominating committee. So, I guess emails are sent.
Hi, I'm Elsa Mir. I'm finance board rep. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a voting member.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm Vice Chair of the Finance Board, voting member. I use he, him pronouns.
Should I introduce myself?
Yeah, you can just give your name.
I'm Caleb Jacobson, election board nominee, corporate studies. He, him.
No, David Retriever, he and pronouns, not voting member. Hi, I'm Michael Chapman. I'm a finance board representative. I'm a voting member. I'm also on nominating committee and I use he.
Hey, I'm Ryan Barron. I am on the finance board. I'm a voting member. I use he and pronouns.
Hi, I'm Candace Martinez-Stone, Assistant Director for Leadership and Governance. I also serve as the SGA advisor. I use she, her pronouns. I am not a voting member. This is Courtney Campbell. She is one of the coordinators for student organizations. She's she, her pronouns, and she's not a voting member.
where he's like the area coordinator for student organizations. I serve as an advisor. Pronouns I do not vote.
Dean Green, Secretary for Finance Board. I'm a non-voting member, and I use he, him pronouns.
Manuel Tunaga, I'm an FYA, first year ambassador. I'm not a voting member, and I use she, her pronouns.
My name is Liam Kim. I serve as the chair of the finance board. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a voting member.
Hi, I'm Zane Hoffner, Vice President for Student Organizations, he, him pronoun, and I am a voting member.
I'm Sierra Green, I'm also first year ambassador, I'm not a voting member, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hello, I'm Matthew Brown, the president of the Legends Club. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm a non-voting member.
I'm Elise Friend, the finance board representative, and the voting member at
All right. So you want to go ahead and give a quick introduction of yourself, why you want to get an election board, why you think you're qualified, all that kind of stuff. You'll get questions from us afterwards. This is a time for you to kind of give your spiel.
Sure. My name is Caleb Jacobson. I was lucky enough to be nominated by Caleb Cagle, the colleague of mine. I'm in global studies. This is my junior year, and I've now hit the ground running, learning a lot about justice. And so those ideas are growing much more near and dear to me as I try to grow as an individual and professional. I have been part of committees before. In my church, I was part of a grants committee which tackled social justice problems. I'm no longer part of that committee right now because I have other work obligations on Sundays. I participate and volunteer at a Esperanza Center in Baltimore where I help immigrants, ESOL speakers learn English for 2 hours a week. That's coming to a close now, but it's a really great opportunity. I think I'm appropriate for a role on the election board because I have a firm sense of duty. I really value my position on any team and my ability to bring stuff to the table and work hard and give it my all. Yeah.
All right. Are there any questions for the candidate at this time? No questions? All right. Question for Candace, actually. In this section for the be it further resolved, does election board members get full voting rights in the nominating committee or no?
No, only the chair of the election board gets full voting rights of the nominating committee.
All right. And I'd like to move to amend JL 11-1920 then.
Second.
I'd like to move to strike be it further resolved that upon confirmation, the election board members shall have voting rights on the nominating committee to nominate members of the election board as stipulated in the SGA bylaws. SGA bylaws don't allow election members to have voting rights because the chair determines the voting members. Or not voting members, determines members of the election board. And they're the ones that get rights to.
Yeah, and there's also like, after all the people are on the election board, then there's like nominating committees kind of
Just like,
yeah. So then this is
So yeah, I'd like to strike that. Here, I'll go through do the thing. Yes.
Oh, and then, are we going to go back? I just had a question.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. So in previous SGA elections, I guess in past years, like voter turnout among students has been lower than like we would like in terms of like engagement and people turning out. So, do you have any like strategies or kind of like ways that you think would be engaging for students to come out and vote in SGA and be kind of part of the election process?
Sure. I think one of the strongest strategies that you can take towards getting more voter turnout is like grassroots, reaching out to people. I myself am I'm not only a transfer student, but I commute a lot, and so I think I have perspective that many students that are on campus all day and feel very intertwined with the goings on may not have. I have felt kind of disconnected, so I think that will give me an opportunity to go in with a different view and let people know how how the decisions we make affect them. Like I said, I'm really duty oriented. I'm quite excited about the fact of learning about this experience and being able to share it with my fellow students and just getting them excited about the process that we have going on here. And education campaigns, I don't know how feasible it would be but maybe working with the school newspaper to help educate. I don't know how many people actually read the newspaper, so that's not a thing. But just education campaign, let people know decisions that we're making, how well you guys make, how they affect them, so it's relevant to the people who will end up voting, hopefully.
Thank you. Candace, another question. When we amend this document, does it then go back to the Senate?
Yes,
Ooh, I don't have to do any oaths of office.
yes. You may need to amend all of them.
Yeah, that's what it's like. All right. Any other questions for the candidate? Any discussion points?
Yeah, so on nominating committee, we corresponded back and forth with Caleb through email, and he answered all of our questions, and he was definitely very eager and interested to be on election board. And as he was saying, he does offer very different perspective that is, I feel that a lot of us on nominating committee felt is really needed, of like someone who's not a resident, who's also a transfer student, because I'm sure as well, it's very hard to try to get the reach of students who are commuters and transfer students, try to like get them involved in more, like help them, I guess, inform them about the election and getting them to be involved.
Any other discussion points? I like him. I think he's got a great name. Works really well with our chair. That being said, I'd like to move to approve JL 11-1920, confirmation of Caleb Jacobson as election board member as amended. All right, all in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? 7 for, 0 against, 1 abstaining, 1 absent. Motion carries. Due to the fact we amended this document, you're going to have to go back to the Senate.
He doesn't have
Oh, you don't have to go back.
You don't have to go back.
Well, no,
You
because
just have-
he gets sworn in. So
Or,
you,
Brenda can just swear them all in at the same time. We'll figure it out.
yeah. So you'll receive notice for instructions, but the legislation, unfortunately, you're not official just yet because we have to go back to the Senate for the changes that we made. But you have the votes in both chambers, so you're pretty much Brenda will find a way to administer you your oath of office. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Do we have to do payroll for him too right now?
No, it's not done.
It's not done. Yeah. Fine. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Should I?
You can head out. You can stay if you'd like. If you want to find out more about how the finance board works.
Or if you wanna go to the one. There's like, yeah, we need to do
Here's yours. You're free to go.
that.
No, because we are putting this back, which means that
Because they changed it, so Senate passed it already. And they have changed it from what Senate passed it as, so they have to send it back to Senate, and Senate has to re-vote, and then it's done.
unless the Senate not change.
They
Good night,
should-
everybody. Thank
they
you.
should-
At this point, the Senate either has to accept the document as is or just create it. Do we strike the Senate information from this sheet then?
No, they'll change it, they can change it. You don't have to do that.
Fantastic. So yeah, the rest of our main one will be coming in. So we have shifting up to our discussion ECSVs. We have legal legends here. Like to move to amend our agenda to open up for quick forums so they can speak on what they'd like to speak on.
I have nothing.
Oh, you're sitting in?
I'm staying in.
Oh, never mind, then I rescind my motion. Moving into discussion for clubs that did not receive ECSVs. So I talked to Britt yesterday, and again further today, along with Assistant Director Bowling, and they're both on board with the plan in terms of letting clubs resubmit their information. Britt's requested that we make the deadline instead of the 27th, which is the day we get back, the 22nd, which is the Wednesday before, which gives her time to put stuff in. According to her, about 9 clubs who did not have ECSVs by the budget deadline have already met with her to get their event planning forms. So there are clubs ahead of the curve, and she is willing to do it electronically as well. Just shooting them the email questions and getting those back, or doing phone calls. She's willing to go that extra distance. So and then they just have to make sure that they pull it up on their end as well. So that's where we're at with that right now. So I was thinking about just doing a targeted one, but I wasn't sure how many clubs that would affect, or like, if I was afraid I might miss something, so I might do a general email burst, using the MailChimp to every single student in org to say if you did not receive ECS fees, should I not do that?
I think it'll be more confusing if you just send it out to everybody.
I can do targeted.
I think you, like, who do you wanna open this up to? Right? Cause you control that process.
Is everyone okay with just doing clubs that did get ECS fees then? Alright, so we can draft up that email. Bridge requested that we send it to her to look over before it gets sent out to all the orgs, but I can handle all of that. So you might get questions to liaisons, but as liaisons, we won't make you send out emails, at least when it comes to this. Orgs might email you about it, but we'll try and keep it centralized. That way there's, all the emails are consistent, if that makes sense. And they're all coming from the same source. Yeah, so is everyone okay with this plan for ECS fees?
I was talking with MTC, and I mentioned to them that they needed an application form, and, they told me that, I guess, I'm not entirely sure how base camp works, but they said that the base camp date has to be up before they can get an event planning form, and while, like, they've spoken with Brett and the event's been made, it's just not, like, processing at all. I had no answer to give them, because I have no idea how any of that.
That's, yeah, I mean, that's an ECS internal thing, they just need to pressure.
Okay.
Yeah. They need to, what's the word I'm looking for? Communicate the urgency.
Has their event been approved?
It was the event that we ended up.
No, I know, but whenever they were in here last week, there was nothing in 25 Live.
Yeah, they said it's marked as tentative right now, and it still needs to be, like, it has been approved, but it hasn't switched from.
They would get an official email saying that it's been approved, like, confirmed. So, I mean, it's all ECS stuff, so since it's tentative, it's technically not approved in their system yet. And ECS system yet, until it's switched over to confirmed. So, they should probably,
Okay.
yeah, that's all ECS.
Oh.
As their liaison, I suppose you could, if you felt comfortable, offer to go with that to the ECS to say, just wondering when this is gonna happen, because, you know, we'd like to know one way or the other, if it's approved or not. If it's not approved, then whatever. If it is approved, then we can be able to go through this whole process.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I'll draft up that email. I'll put it as in like a drive so that you guys can make suggestions and edits. But I'm thinking by around Thursday or so, I'm gonna send whatever we have over to Brit Spears, and then once we get the approval from her that she's okay with our content of that, then we'll send it out to the clubs that we've indicated. Yeah. So that's our plan going forward with ECS fees. If clubs ask about that, you can tell them that's our official plan. But is everyone okay with that? Just want to make sure no objections. Everyone cool with doing this?
They just asked, I guess MTC asked that when you do the to make sure, I guess, to be very clear in like what is needed, I guess if the event planning form is needed or, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's an excellent piece of feedback. You could make a,
You make cool one.
you could just make a handout that you have in the office, that you have posted, like, what do you need for each of these fields? You know, what kind of documentation do you need for these fields?
You can talk to the TST. Right?
Yeah, TST.
You can even ask Brett for like a sample.
Treasurer's report.
Also, how are they submitting this info, like, what information?
Gosh.
Because the survey monkey's closed, right?
I was planning on just having you on the finance board email.
For what?
Email the finance board email with their event planning form.
For them? They should not, they're going through Sahas.
I don't know if it'd be in the Sahas system or not.
I would route it through Sahas. That would be my recommendation. Even if it's coming from a different Sahas. I would route it through Sahas, the Sahas one.
Alright, so yeah, I'll put that in email, but you can let organization know that they'll submit through the Sahas on SurveyMonkey. They'll just be putting in their ECS fees to that section, because that's all that we'll be funding for this pot. an organization that didn't do it is eligible to receive funding. Alright. Everyone go with the details on that now? I wanna make sure I don't forget anything, because that would have been a big yikes. Alright. While we're still waiting for Congress to show up, we can move ahead to legislation. If you want to pull up FPL 339-1920. Justin, I'll run through this one. Alright, so it's an amendment to the Finance Board procedural rules. Last year, during the second to last Finance Board official meeting that term had, the 18-19 term did, they introduced this document, which basically changed to add in that the vice chair would be in charge of liaisons. I checked through like the meeting minutes of that. I think I was present at that one along with Nithya and Elise, and they didn't actually pass it. They just talked about it and said it was up to the next board to determine, and they didn't pass it. So we're going to go ahead and pass that. So you want to go ahead and scroll down to attachment A. This is in the procedure rules, section 1.2 for elected officers. Keep scrolling. Here, so section 1.2.2, that the vice chair will be charged with the responsibilities of managing, coordinating, delegating, overseeing the liaison system. The responsibilities include assigning elected finance representatives as liaisons to student organizations, overseeing the reassignment of liaisons to orgs as necessary, track liaison communications, serve as appointed contact liaisons as needed, and assign liaisons to organizations during the first meeting. So Justin's already done a lot of this work. This is just making it official. That way it will be under the vice chair's purview. I took out another thing in there. So this is amended from what it was last year. So there's no language specifically barring the chair and vice chair from taking on liaisons now. And then in section 1.2.3, for the purpose of the liaison system, serve as communication bridge between elected finance board representatives and the student organization leaders. Liaisons will assist with all questions regarding the budget application process throughout the semester in order to have a cohesive understanding of the requests that were presented to the finance board. In the liaison role of finance board representatives, we will communicate with student organizations pertaining to finance board requests and advertise regular open office hours as determined by the chair of the finance board. Review and sign reallocation requests as necessary, which is in Article 6 of Budgetary Policies. Review petitions for Sahas and subsequently bring before the Finance Board, which you guys have already been doing. And then attend penalty meetings for student organizations under Finance Board representative liaison duties as necessary. This would be if Finance Board does decide to penalize an organization, which doesn't happen that often, but it's still something to know. You good? No, when I said that, you kind of went wide-eyed and just stared at the screen for a minute. Alright, so this is the document that I'm pushing forward. This is part 1. Part 2 is going to be a JL that we'll talk about once or if this is passed. So yeah, any questions or discussion? No? I'd like to move to approve FPL 339-1920. Alright. All in favor, please raise your hand now. All opposed? 7-4, 0 against, 1 abstaining, 1 not present, and with a 2/3 majority, the motion passes. Alright, we'll hold off on discussion for the general body meeting until after May and Lloyd have come in for their confirmations. Just a heads up for our thing, we might be taking recesses in between. We're simply waiting for confirmation on these to apply. Their schedules are before and after 7 and after 7:30, so that's just the way it's going to be. There might be points in the meeting where we're not doing anything. I'll call it recess during that time frame. I'm just letting you guys know now. But up next is JL 13-1920, which is another amendment to the SGA Budgetary Policy. Would you be willing to sponsor?
Oh, yes.
Just another amendment to the SGA Budgetary Policy. Whereas the SGA Finance Board Chair and Vice Chair recognize the need for more liaisons, and whereas the power of reallocations to be outdated and does not reflect the current standards and procedures, let it be resolved that the SGA Budgetary Policy be amended as set forth in Attachment A. Attachment A, if you scroll down, is just Section 6 of the Budgetary Policy for reallocations, adding in Section 6.1.2. Should the Chair of the Finance Board be also be the liaison for organization, then the Vice Chair of the Finance Board must sign off on the reallocation request. and it modifies the original 6.1.2, which is now 6.1.3, to state that, in parentheses, if a disagreement regarding reapplication between the chair and the liaison or the chair and the vice chair should section 6.1.2 apply. You know, I mean, so yeah, and then so this would basically make sure that the chair can't just like reallocate as they see fit. There's still chain of command and progress there. There's still two sets of eyes looking at it. Yeah. Once you pass it through, though, it'll have to go to the Senate. So it's not complete here because it is a budgetary policy change. But if you guys want to make any changes, please make them now. Everyone good?
Makes sense.
Questions or discussion points? All right. I'd like to move to approve JL 13-1920. All right. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? 7 for, 0 against, 1 abstaining, 1 not present. This motion passes through the Finance Board. All right. May is here. So this is amazing. Nominee for Election Board. I'd like to introduce JL 12-20, which is the confirmation of May Zhang as an Election Board member. Before we start, I'd like to move to amend JL 12-1920 to strike the section of be it further resolved. All right. All in favor? All right. We're going to go ahead and strike that section. We'll start with introductions. So we'll kind of go around the table and introduce ourselves. You can give at that point. After they give them time to explain why you want to be the election board, why you're here, what you want to do, past experience and stuff. Then we'll go to a round of questions, and then we'll move into discussion. So start with introductions. I'll go first. My name is Liam Kim. I currently serve as the chair of the Finance Board. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a voting member.
Hi, I'm Zane Pontmarie. Vice President for Student Organization, Deacon of Pronouns.
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm the first year ambassador for Network. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm not a voting member.
Hello, I'm Matthew Brown, president of the League Legends Club. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a non-voting member.
I'm Elise Choi, Finance Board Representative, voting member, and I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Untitled Chapter, I'm a Finance Board Representative. I use she, her pronouns. I am a voting member, and I'm also on nominating committee.
Hi, I'm Samir. I'm a Finance Board Rep. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a voting member.
I'm Justin Conner, Vice Chair of Finance Board. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a voting member.
Hi, I am May. I use she, her pronouns, and
Yeah, candidate for the election.
candidate for the election board.
I'm Michael Chapter, Finance Board Representative, I am a voting member, and I'm also not a voting member.
I'm Ryder. I'm on the Finance Board. I'm a voting member, and I use
Candace Martinez-Stone, Assistant Director for Leadership and Governance. I also serve as SGA advisor, she, her pronouns. I am not a voting member.
Courtney Campbell, she, her pronouns, coordinator for student organization development, Finance Board advisor. I don't vote.
Tori is the coordinator for student organizations. I serve as an advisor. She, her pronouns. I don't.
Dean Green, Secretary for Finance Board. I'm a non-voting member, and I use he, him pronouns.
My name is Manuela Chava. Also a first year ambassador. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm not a voting member.
All right. So you want to give that quick introduction for yourself. You know, well, you already give your name, but you know why you want to be in the election board, stuff like that. Just writing why you want to be here today.
So I was a part of the election board last year. My job or my task was to plan for events. I think that last year was a success in terms of increasing voter turnout. So what we did was we were proactive in that we handed out flyers, we had posters out to make people aware of election or make people aware of election itself, and to make people aware that they can also run to be a part of the SGA. And then the events we held the Rita's event, a game that establishes what the SGA does, and there was another event, I don't remember, but that garnered a lot of attention, which I think further improved our election results, as well as being out there, being active, and getting people to vote during election day. And then I want to be a part of this continuation of evolving the election board to establish a presence and I guess establish like a baseline of what the future election board should be expecting and should be aiming towards. So setting goals for future generation of the election board itself.
All right. Any questions for the candidate at this time?
So you said that you're part of election board last year. What areas do you think you could improve or do better on?
I think that the events themselves, I think we can tweak a little bit to improve more attention, or to get more attention. We realized that food gets people a lot of attention, as well as giving out prizes. But my idea was that this year we shouldn't we should let people, or make so one of my ideas for this event, or could be event, is that we can hold a game in which that they don't know the prizes that they're gonna get. So I think that mystery really is quite alluring, because if they don't know what the prizes are, and all they know is that they're pretty good prizes, then they are more likely to participate in the event themselves, or the event itself, and then participate in understanding what the SGA is, and then that prize thing is gonna be, in my opinion, for not their main priority. Then it becomes the SGA itself. It becomes a greater priority. But also during the election itself, the election day, we should have a huge list or a huge board of policies that people want to see changed, and that so it resonates with them personally, and that they want to vote for the people that can bring those changes, and therefore they will vote or participate.
Go ahead and ask another one. So as a returning member of the election board, there's going to be a lot of new faces. How do you plan to engage them? Because as election board officials, there's a lot of rules you guys have to enforce. So, how do you plan to help the new people come along with the process?
So last year, I think our chair did a great job at opening us to the rules and amendments of the rules itself. She had us to read the rules and then make any changes if we see any discrepancies. So I think to make the new people familiar with the election board itself, we have to be familiarized with the rules itself, but also assign or break up the committee or the election board committee into groups in which that certain people are assigned to certain tasks to make it more efficient, and to be familiarized with those small groups as well.
Any other questions? All right, we're gonna go ahead and move into a period of discussion. During discussion, only finance board representatives and other officials may talk amongst each other. You won't be able to talk during this time, but if you hear something you feel is off, or you feel like your words have been misconstrued, you'll be given a time after discussion to address any concerns that you feel. All right, with that, we're moving into discussion. Anyone want to start us off?
I think having like that prior experience is definitely a plus, because she can sort of take all the things that worked last year, and keep them, and then also make changes as they see fit. So I think that's a huge benefit.
Just to second Elsa's point, I definitely think maybe part of a election board last year that increased voter turnout was also a very important aspect in trying to bring, because she knows like what works, and can work with the board to kind of expand on those ideas, and hopefully also again increase voter turnout. So I think would be to have her on the board would be good. To have her on the board would be a really good asset to that process.
Any other discussion points? Go ahead.
Discussion points is what everyone else said. I feel like her experience last year is invaluable, and it would definitely help push the board along this year to have a successful election.
Any other points? Everyone good? All right, I'd like to move previous question to debate. All in favor? All opposed? All right. Anything else you'd like to address before moving to voting? All right, then. That being said, I'd like to move to approve JL 12-1920 as amended.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please raise your hands now. All opposed? And with 2/3 of the vote, this motion passes to the Finance Board. We'll return to the Senate next Monday.
So, not technically confirmed yet, because they changed legislation from what the Senate sent out. So it has to go back to the Senate, and the Senate has to revote. So it won't be.
You probably won't have to come in on Monday or next Monday. The speaker will send you an email if you do or not, but you'll probably just pass the amendment legislation and we'll find a way to make just what you guys.
I'll figure it
But yeah, congratulations. You are free. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you guys.
See you, man. Have a great time. All right. While we're waiting for Lloyd to arrive, okay, good. He isn't here. Thought I should have big myself. I'd like to reopen discussion for general body meetings. Is everyone okay with that?
Michael's face up.
Michael's done with it. So is anyone objecting to the idea of using a living document as our current definition, then passing a Finance Board resolution, basically stating that the Finance Board will use this living document as its guideline for what is and isn't a general body meeting? Right.
Have you seen the bottom of the document by chance?
Which one? Which one?
Oh, the general body meeting.
Yeah, you can present.
I read something over break. Just a little
You're
snippet.
bored?
No, it's actually really fun.
Were you bored?
No.
You didn't say much?
Just plug it in.
Did you see it?
This is important to me. Never mind.
Oh my God.
She's asking what would compel you to look over your Thanksgiving break on the definition of a general body.
It's a little program that is based on what Michael has written up.
Is it like you input things and then it tells you if it's a general body meeting? Okay. Oh, fine.
It's
Our own
a little
research
Python program.
around.
You don't understand. The past couple meetings, all they wanted to do is turn Finance Board into BuzzFeed quizzes.
Is it? Yes.
It's
Is
a
it?
little Python
Yeah, pretty much.
program.
Again, with a lot of.
Let's see it.
You don't think it's models?
I do.
you were gonna go?
Yeah.
Go all the way down.
You gotta click the link.
Click this.
The first one.
Alright, you want to let Mike take over?
You can just click run. I do it.
You know how to code?
I'm looking for you.
Oh, okay.
I would hope so.
Okay, so what do we do? Hello.
This
Is that
program
my
will
turn?
help you to determine if your plan is likely to be considered a GPM board event. A plan with a score equal to or higher than 330 will be considered an event, and a plan less than or equal to 20 will be considered a general body meeting.
What if they're 25?
It's a gray zone. I specifically coded a like a 10 point barrier that allowed like discrepancy for the nobody.
Okay.
It can be a definite point, but I just thought.
No, I think that.
I think that gives us the leniency that we're.
Okay, so let's see.
So just pick inputs that you can put in.
So is this that happening at your regular meeting time?
Yes.
Okay, are we planning to have a lecturer? I don't know, why not? Yes. Yes, yes, sir.
Try again. It's like that's not, that would air it out, so make sure answer the question.
Okay, how many members do you have in your organization?
20.
How many UMBC undergraduate students are you expecting?
25, 50?
Are you planning to request for event conference services or ECS fees? Yes. Are you collaborating with other organizations? No. Are you advertising to the UMBC undergraduates? Yes. So we received a score of 25, needed 5 more points to be considered an event. This falls in the gray area.
So if it falls in the gray area, does that mean that it's like a debate then?
Yeah. It'll be a horse session debate.
I think it's really.
The maximum explanation, so 5 points at a different time, 5 points is a lecture. 10 points if it's 10 or more non-medical students, 10 points if they are CSVs, 15 points for collaboration. Yeah, this is
so
very
nice.
impressive.
I didn't use it.
I know. I was looking at
What do people feel about that?
Actually, for this one, if you don't mind, I'd like to just, since it's such an important topic, I'd like to go around the group and get everyone's opinions. It can be like a one sentence, like, yeah, this is good, or if you have more you'd like to put in. I'm just curious to hear what everyone feels about
Can I
this.
start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to explain, the point system is arbitrary. I was just kind of going off the document that Michael created, just kind of doing whatever, but they're just listed above.
I love this program. I think Ryan did a lot of hard work and effort into this. This was actually what I was thinking about doing. I only have a small reservation, and the only reservation I have is the fact that if we create this program and there's an event that's created or is said to something, an activity that's said to be an event, and then the finance board looks at it, it's like, yeah, it's not really. Would that tire him? Kind of, I'm just more curious or concerned about that. If it's not, I'm for it. It's just for it.
Have 2 sentences, remember? That's all you're going to need. Candace, go ahead.
I guess that goes back to, do you want to have a pretty hard and fast definition for GBMs to look to? Like, this is basically a rubric. Check, 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 GBM, check, check, not GBM. Like, so do you want to have a rubric style to be able to judge things against so that there's no real questioning? Or do you want to be able to debate all of it and then make determinations on each thing? That's sort of like, what land do you want to live in? Each has its benefits, right? The rubric takes the questions out of it and makes it much cleaner. The sort of evaluate each one allows for more nuance. It just depends on how you want to approach the problem. Neither one is wrong. So.
I was giving a lot of thought to this last night, and I think the sweet point of that is actually kind of right in the middle in that gray area that Ryan was talking about. One that can eliminate all of the things that we definitely would consider an event and go and really use the board's time more focused on things that we might have questions about whether follow-up questions about the event,
You can
include,
ask these questions.
right, and, I think I put it in some of my notes, just asking these questions to go try to figure out more information about what it's like.
Ilse, thoughts?
So I have a question regarding like to what extent, like how seriously we're going to take the number that it gives us, and are they going to, is this going to be a requirement for clubs to do? And then is there going to be a place in SurveyMonkey where they like tell us the number that they got, or like, I don't know how this program works, does the numbers just always like come back to us magically? And then also, if, like, are we going to still go through like event by event, like, request by request? Or are we just gonna take that blindly, and if the number is way off of your thing, like, is it like, we're not, like, we know for certain it's not, let me rephrase that. Are we only going to discuss the events that are in that gray area, or are we still going to discuss every event, even with when we have that number? Yes, Mr. Program.
I wrote the program, yeah, but
Like,
the
I-
application for the program out to the board, so I don't think I'm qualified alone to answer this question.
I think it's good as a guideline. So, clubs can put in this information. They can find out whether or not their event's likely to be seen. Like, they could do this score, get a score of like 0, like this is the biggest GVM that's ever GVM'd ever, and they could still request funding from us. They'd be very clear that, the chances that would be very low. So it's kind of like a way for them to test that would this event be potentially considered a GVM or not. If it's in the gray area, then it's more likely to be debated. They can say, when we did the test, it was in the gray area. That's why we submitted our funding request. I think that it might be like a precedent we could go off of in terms of like, if it's in the event, then we should be more predisposed to think of it as such. But I didn't see it as like a sort of hard and fast, like, oh, that's a 21, not a 20. It's over for you, if that makes sense. Go ahead.
So is this information going to be available to us? Like, if the club chooses to do it, are we going to get like the numbers as well? Or is it just like, if you want to do it on your own time, this is for your own peace of mind, so you know, like, yourself when you're requesting?
Candace and then Michael.
I think it's good to tell student orgs how you are evaluating things to determine whether or not they're keeping up, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be this program, but it can be like, here's the rubric that we use, right? And because that's, like I said, that's basically what the weight is for these things. Because in this one, whether or not they collaborate with another student org has more weight than whether or not it's at the time of their meeting. That's how you set it up, right? So what those weights are could be determined by you. But if you do create a rubric and you advertise that, you need to live by that. Because if you deviate from that, then student org, that's when people get upset. We say these are the guidelines, these are the paradigms in which you need to operate, and then you deviate from that. Like, it's a phrase I used last year. It's like, then they're playing a game that they don't know the rules to. And that's when I get frustrated. That's when I get frustrated. If I have to operate in a system and I don't know the rules and the rules keep changing, that's when I get frustrated. If I know what to expect, I'm good. If you tell them what to expect, they know what to do.
Michael?
So I love this program, Ryan. I have to echo that one more time. I think what might be a really good use is, on SGA under financial resources page, we have a lot of different tools and stuff that organizations can use. I think this would be a great addition. Kind of give them the living document of what a GVM is, followed by this program to maybe input some information, maybe extend the gray area a little bit more, to give the board a little more room to make decisions. But I think that would be a really good tool or resource for students to have that utilize it as such. So I think that would be the sweet between.
Does that answer your question? Other discussion points? Oh, yeah. Justin.
mean, kind of like what I'm hearing so far, like, no, really not the end all be all of like whether that's something the GPMs really got. My only thing is like, I can see this leading to like a little bit more confusion, especially if people like do go through this and get a certain answer or result, and then finance board says something totally different. Just because like the idea of a general body means it's gonna change from board to board. And so it's like, is this program gonna like change with it? Like we would need somebody like to constantly go in and like maybe update like what the points would be, and Ryan's not always gonna be here.
Yeah, I think it doesn't have to be a program, it could be like a worksheet, and then, you know, you could say, is it yes or no, and then you have scoring, like scoring instructions for it, and that could be a Word document. I know you're all very proficient, I hope, in Word, but I think what you were trying to get at is, here are some parameters, like, here, let's put some structure around the conversation that's been happening to answer the questions that we keep trying to answer. Like, let's put it black and white as opposed to like trying to paint it. So.
I mean, I thought that the entire point of having like these discussions and having this like rubric style thing was so that it wasn't going to be changing word. Like, we're trying to eliminate the discrepancies between years. So, I mean, I don't know if that's like that would be the primary concern, but I think there is something to be said about like if the probe or like the rubric, whatever, like somehow like not misleads them, or they are under like a different impression and then they get a different response, and then they might be a little like but I mean, like, hats off to Ryan for making this program. That's crazy amazing. But yeah, I think, and like also like for like what Candace said about like we would then be making a more, it's not legislation, but I feel like it would be more rigid than like what we're intending. Not that I'm opposed to rigidity, but yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think, like I said, there's pluses and deltas. There's pros and cons to either way, right? You make it really very much a rubric, and they can see, okay, it's a GBM. I'm not like, but then you don't get a lot. You as a board don't get a lot of leeway in that. But then the student orgs know, then they have an answer. I think some of the confusion or frustration that can come from student orgs is like, they feel like they don't know what you're gonna say, that there's not consistency. Why did they get this and I didn't get that, or my work? That like when you put structure around something, whether or not someone agrees with that, they at least know what to expect. They know what they're getting themselves into, and that's your power as the finance board. Other finance boards could change it through legislation if you legislated it. That's their prerogative. They need to advertise that to boards or to student orgs. But yeah, I think saying here's a tool that we give to student orgs to say, you know, finance board doesn't fund GBMs. What's a GBM? Use this worksheet to figure out if your event would be considered a GBM. I think they will appreciate that. Because then they can have yes or no.
Ryan, then also.
Can you actually like slide the middle bar over? It's like that looks fun.
This way?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't change the program. Oh, you definitely did. So this bars are not supposed to look like
The line.
cut off. Yeah. This was the other consistent. Got it.
I mean, I just, it was just like, another benefit could also be that if they do this rubric on their own, and then they realize that they answered no to questions and their like scores were low and like it didn't like, you know, meet up with like the guidelines, then they could alter their
Change their
event before they were like, so they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna do conservation now, which is, you know, something that we encourage, so that's also benefit.
After that, Mike.
What do you guys define as general body for a club? Is it membership or just the general student population?
As far as general body members, if you defined as your constitution for your organization has a definition of what you consider to be a member of your organization. General body days is, we're trying to hammer out that definition right now, but the general consensus would be it's the time when your general body members meet to conduct the business of the organization.
I don't mean like the term that are the definition of general body meeting, I mean just like the general body.
So those would be members of your organization, not just members of the general UMBC. Michael, then Ryan, then
So we always looking for that compromise. Was wondering, would maybe a good solution to this, with not having being too rigid and not being too flexible, be a scenario where we, as a board, write into our budgetary statutes a bunch of ideas about definitively what we do not believe the general body meeting is, and then go and leave leniency in other areas for other boards to interpret as a right document.
we could do that. I have no objections to that. Oh, go ahead.
So pretty much what I'm proposing is write into our budgetary statutes certain things that we intrinsically believe, but we definitely believe are definitely things that are general body meetings, and putting that into our budgetary statutes and distributing it to student organizations. And then going and following that up with maybe a guideline to future boards about things that we think are considered general body meetings, but the board has flexibility to try to negotiate as they see fit. That's my recommendation.
No, Brian, my bad. Brian first.
Okay. So,
You spoke prior.
I want to ask Matthew a question here since he's here. Do you think it'd be more helpful to have like a gray area for what we consider to be a GBM, or do you think it'd be more helpful to have something like a program or a rubric?
I mean, personally, I do think it'd be better with a rigid definition, but what I was thinking about after I asked the question about what do you guys consider a general body is that, you know, knowing that the members, like what we define as members in our constitution determines what a general body is, that would end up putting more weight on us to determine who our members are. Because at that point, if we host an event, like for example, like if we take Overwatch for example, they have a meeting every single Friday at 12 to 3. If they don't have a definition of who their members are, if they're allowing anyone to come in, whether they regularly attend meetings or not, then is that a general body meeting? Because if people aren't members, then they're hosting an event and people are coming in who aren't normal members of the club, right? So at that case, it becomes a little bit, you know, hairy as to who or what a general body meeting is.
Nuance.
I was gonna say that I'm not entirely sure. I feel like adding something to the budgetary statute in general is more on something that's, I guess, rigid, because it's something that we're on and voting on and stuff, and it just to me like feels like something set in stone. I mean, I know there are ideas and stuff, but I feel like that would end up on the more rigid side. Moreover, I guess after all these discussions in the past few meetings, like I'm unsure about. Well, I know like having structure is really beneficial. I'm really unsure of like the effect that it would have us like having this kind of definition, since like clubs on campus can be so varied in like their structure and how they do conduct their like business and whatnot. I'm not really sure. I'm just not really sure if I guess defining a GBM, though I know it may reduce debate and stuff, I'm not entirely sure if that's the best.
So you said your idea was to add, like, what's definitively not a GBM into the guidance book.
Well, actually, I would prefer if we added into the guiding docs just specific points about things that we do feel are GBMs.
We do feel it?
Right. So, like, things that we feel are disqualifying information about GBMs. That's the richer part of it. That's in the budgetary documents. It can change from board to board if the next board chooses to change it, but under normal circumstances, the board should try to, I guess, follow that rule. But then you have a more flexible part where you leave the future board the opportunity about things that you do believe are GBMs, but it's up to their decision about whether this is a GBM or not. So, like, something that we don't fund, like put into the budgetary statutes that we don't fund events that aren't advertised to the general UMBC campus community. That's something in the budgetary statutes. If it isn't advertised, we know that we can't fund it. But then leave it up to the future board about whether or not a lecturer is something that we would consider to be a GBM or not. And I think that gives the leeway between flexibility and rigidity that I think the board doesn't want to overstep and be too rigid and break the system, too flexible and just not. So that's my thought.
I originally was taking sort of Nikki aside because by nature, because by nature I think adding something to our like budgetary statutes gives it like this like really like illusion of like really weird or whatever. But it's sort of I think like what we did with the food, and we knew that we were not going to fund like food for GBMs, and so we wrote that in because that's something that's a pretty like hard for determination. Although that was, I think, just legislation. We added that to it.
Yeah.
So I think that if you like, there could be a few points that are that set in stone that we could add, but I'm also in favor of just having a document because we don't like if we don't need to half and half it, then I don't think we really need to. But,
Please.
I'm not really in favor of the blueprint idea of just having like a strict checklist. So that's what I mean.
How's your thoughts?
I mean, personally, like, I would much rather a rigid document just because it gives me flexibility in what I can do with the Constitution. Because when I determine who's a member, who's not a member, I essentially say, well, is my event or is my meeting at a GBM or an event, and I get to decide from much earlier which is which.
I personally like the rubric. I feel that it kind of allows them to stay on the close side, because if they feel that they have to go back in to make sure that they get funding, then maybe they're not really reliable to get funding in the first place. So, personally, I would like to see a rubric like this instilled. I think there's also a question of what exactly is the
Yeah, I would probably agree with like making a rigid definition so that there is a clear line of what is what. I think Brian mentioned earlier about the flex system, just like arbitrary. So I think going with like a rubric and making it kind of down the line rigid would be helpful in terms of making sure that when students or students are requesting for events that they know like that they're not submitting requests that are all just kind of like we've had in the past, because there was a understanding of what like general body meeting and like what Matt brought up like about like what it means to be a general member or something like that, which I guess would bring like money for it, like we got questions about like constitutions and that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely something we should
Wilson?
just as a point of clarification for myself, but also for you. For like the example that you brought up with Overwatch and how it would leave sort of this gray area for clubs to establish who their members are, and then in turn that would affect what would be considered GBM. I mean, from my understanding, even if like Overwatch did not have a rigid definition of who they consider members, that doesn't necessarily negate the fact that they would be having a GBM, because GBMs aren't always exclusive to members only, right? Like usually people can watch and so whether or not I don't know if that would be like a deciding factor of how to determine whether or not that would be a GBM. So I don't know, like as far as the concern of it being up to clubs to look at their constitution and determine that, I don't think that will be something that they'll be pressured to do.
So, I did like the idea of grouping, but I think it should be, I don't know if this was taught, but there should be at some point where it's stated that, it would be, I guess the responses would be assessed at the discretion of the board or whatever, so there's really no point in what the board was saying. Oh, well, I put this and you still, said, that it was different or something else.
Want your thoughts or not?
Right on to the computer.
Ms. Easley?
Just, I feel like it's kind of getting circular at this point, to be honest. I think if I were to give my baseline definition of a GBM, it's a consistent meeting, and consistent's going to be different for every organization, and whether that's weekly, twice a week, bi-weekly, once a month, whatever that looks like, to conduct what their purpose is. In my opinion, events are easily open to and advertised to everyone. If the purpose is to get people that don't regularly attend. In my opinion, just asking for pizza for a meeting is a GBM, because pizza does not bring any purpose to any meeting, in my opinion. Besides getting people there and feeding people, but that is generally what my thoughts are. I think events are more so, they're not happening weekly, they're not happening monthly. I might take that back on the monthly thing, because some people do put on series that are events, so, but they're not happening when they're happening, it's known, it's advertised, it's a thing, versus we want to have something private with pizza with 10 of us in a room somewhere. My thoughts. Without repeating anything.
I really like what you created, and I think the questions that you asked were really helpful. And for me, I know that if I was in this position trying to fill out this form or trying to provide information to a group of people like you guys to make this decision, I would want the most amount of information possible in terms of what the parameters are for a GBM. Because the broad scope of it and comes with all this fine print that's only known to people who have the privilege of working with this type of stuff all the time. So whether it's providing those types of questions on SurveyMonkey or finding a way to generate the program, I think the more specific you can be with details, and even if you were to provide examples, I don't know, I personally find that to be helpful, but I know that's not for everyone.
Yeah, I'd like to apologize for anyone going through a circular discussion. I just think that with the topic, it's important to get how everyone feels. So if you'd like to change on that, I'm fine to just keep moving on. But I didn't want anyone's voice to not be heard in this case, which is why I put on that. So, Candace, final thoughts?
Nope.
Alright. So I think the two options looking ahead of us are, oh, Frank, go ahead.
What are your thoughts?
My thoughts? Oh, I don't know. I think either way could work. I think the benefits of the rubric would be more useful for organizations, but I think that gives the board less autonomy. I think the best way is I'm still prioritizing the official way, which would be, having that document out there saying, this is what's most likely going to be considered as a GBM. You can calculate deem those points to be relevant. But for the ultimate decision to be within the hands of the board to determine whether or not an event is a GBM, because you could try and weasel your way to create an event that ticks just enough boxes to be considered as an event, but it really isn't. And I don't want to look for the worst of people, but someone's going to try it. Yeah, so the two options I think we have before us right now are looking at creating a standard rubric to give out to clubs and organizations that we work on. And that rubric could, again, still be like a living document that we can shape as we see fit, but like something that has hard and fast information on it, versus I think it's just guidelines that clubs could go by with the full decision being against the board. And then Michael had a couple compromises here and there.
You can take mine off the table.
I'm not trying to discredit your work. It seems like the majority of thoughts from them are leaning towards having a standard rubric that we work with. Is everyone okay with if this rubric were to be created, it'd be a Google document that would be edit access for all of us and be only for everyone else, attached to a finance board resolution, with the resolution basically stating that this year's finance board is going to use this rubric as its definition of the general body meeting, that this rubric can be updated at any time as a finance board member sees fit, stuff like that. So they could check out that document, but it wouldn't be a hard and fast change into any legislation. But it would still be standard rules that, with that resolution, we'd be obligated to follow. And this information would be passed on to the next board, but it wouldn't be required by the next board, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I've heard things working out. That probably work out to be the best for everyone. But if you guys have other suggestions, I'm happy to hear them now. More than happy to please give suggestions. No? Oh, Zane, sorry.
I mean, I just think I'm excited about making sure that it's known that this finance board is going to be using the document. Just because like things are always such a change, but I think definitely for the spring semester and seeing how it works out and maybe organizations respond to it, I think would be a good kind of way to measure like if it's effective and if it's like any improvements we can make on it. I think just emphasizing that this board would be a good idea when I put that.
Is everyone okay with the idea of a rubric, but keeping that rubric as a living document, not amending with legislation to our budgetary statutes? Michael?
I don't know, guys. It's just gotten all different types of crazy. It shouldn't be as hard. Make it hard than it needs to be. The only thing is, I kind of feel that there needs to be a certain element of rigidity, just for the simple fact that if we go back to amending as we see fit, it's essentially more or less the same system we have currently with it being on Google Drive. So, I mean, I think adding some type of element of rigidity adds to the fact that it's more of a standard that student organizations can go by. So, that's just my 2 cents.
We can, keep it as a living document, but maybe changes only work with approval of 2/3 of the board or something like that.
I think that could possibly work, but if you're doing something with changes of 2/3 of the board, it wouldn't need to be, at the very least, a resolution, if not legislation.
So we'd still be passing a resolution regarding this. So we create a rubric with, basically something like this says, if it meets this criteria, then it is a general body meeting. If it doesn't, then it's most likely considered an event. And direct organizations to that. We pass a resolution as a board saying that this is the definition that we're going to stick to as a board that we'll be using for the rest of this year. Ideally, it'd be picked up by the next board and they just say, yeah, we're going to use this too. But the resolution will kind of be the hard and fast that this board, by voting and adopting the resolution, means that we will be using this document to determine that. And then stipulating if we want to change the document, it's just a 2/3 vote of the board or something along those lines. But a resolution, if this board passes a resolution, then that does bind this board to do stuff, if that makes sense. It's not legislation. Legislation binding would bind every board after us, but a resolution still binds this current board. This board voted to do something. If that makes sense.
I think you just need to make a decision one way or the other. I think there's some hesitancy around making a decision because you're like, well, I would advise to just take a vote. Do we do a rubric? Do we not do a rubric? Rubric, no rubric. If you do a rubric, then you have to come up, then you have a committee or the mini committee or whatever to create your rubric, and then that's it. If no, then you can create some guidelines, but which then allow for some flexibility. But you got to make a decision about which path you're going to take.
Everyone good for a straw poll, or does anyone want to discuss anything further? All right, we'll do straw poll. Option 1 will be to use a rubric. Option 2 will be to not use a rubric. All in favor of option 1, please raise your hands now. All right, all in favor of option 2? All right, then looks like we will be adopting the rubric. That being said, for the creation of this rubric, since I don't want to take up additional time on the board's behalf, I'll take Ken's suggestion to establish a subcommittee. This committee will be responsible for determining the contents of the rubric, the definitions involved and such. The scope of this committee will be as such that it will help to create the rubric, to define what a GBM is, and present this rubric to the full finance board for a final vote of the board determination. As far as membership, anyone from the finance board is welcome into the committee. All ex officio are welcome to the committee as well, and FYAs. All right. That's all you're going to do to establish a committee, by the way. You don't actually need to vote on it. I've learned that. That's pretty cool. Who wants to be a part of it? Zane? Cynthia? Ryan? Courtney? Anyone else? Michael's done with GBMs. Candace?
I don't necessarily want to be on. I want to say something.
Oh, go ahead.
I think that whatever the committee creates, they should then present to the board, and then the board can do
Yes.
that, right? Yeah? Cool.
Yeah.
Just
That's
so everybody's
the
clear.
scope of the committee is to create a document for the board to go for. But instead of having each individual member make one or trying to make one and present it right away, it'd be a think tank. Go ahead.
So I guess I should put this for my goal. But committees in here, are they only allowed to be made up of members plus like advisors?
I think they can include other people, because last year Scott made an SRC reform committee.
Okay.
Who would you want to join?
Well, I just didn't know if there's anybody else that was like possibly student leaders, if there's like invite people to like maybe from the finance board and ask their perspective. Or I don't know if it's just better to like keep it to members.
That'll be whoever chairs that committee. Make that decision in terms of who votes and that kind of stuff. Just the goal of the committee. The only thing that I can define in creating the committee is the scope of it and the guidelines set forth. All right, so we have Zane, we have Ryan, we have Nithya, and we have Courtney. All right. That we're going to go ahead and end discussion in the general body. Everyone okay with that? Next time we'll discuss it is when the committee comes forward with their rubric to bring to us. That being said, so I reached out to Lloyd, and by reached out I mean I've been bugging Brenda, but I haven't gotten anything back from her yet. He did receive the email to be here at 6 o'clock, so we just don't know anything yet, whether or not he'll show up. So while we wait for John, who cannot arrive until after 7:10 because his class ends at 7, I'm going to go ahead and call a recess. We'll reconvene at 7 o'clock.
Do you use Google Calendar? I can try to find a time for us. I'm going to be out for the rest of the year starting next Friday. So,
Put me on the committee.
so we're putting Candace on.